beat Mario Kart Double Dash for the second time, so I'm not really quite sure what to do next. Hey guys, again, I'm so glad you're joining me for these. Again, the point of these is just give you, 3 short videos a week that can just further your relationship with God, that just help you take a minute to breathe and remember God's truths. And I miss you guys a ton, and I'm so excited for when church is back. But until then, I'm so happy that we can continue meeting up like this through Zoom meetings and all of that. So, yeah, let's get into today's lesson. We're going to go into 1 Peter 4, and we're going to hit verses 7 through 11 today. They say, "But the end of all things is at hand, therefore be serious and watchful in your prayers. And above all things have fervent love for one another, for love will cover a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without grumbling, as each one has received a gift. Minister it to one another, as good stewards of the manifold of God. If anyone speaks, let him speak as the oracles of God. If anyone ministers, let him do that with the ability which God supplies, that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belong the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen." So, we just came from looking at having the mind of Christ, arming ourselves with the same mind, and now Peter is getting into some practical advice. Some of them are easier than others, obviously, but overall, it's just how to live. And it's very practical here, like I said. So going through this, "But the end of all things is at hand," this is verse 7, "therefore be serious and watchful in your prayers." So what he's saying here, and when it says the end, it doesn't mean like the chronological end. What it means is like the climax of everything building up. Because everything is right now building up to Christ coming back. So when it says be serious and watchful, when it says serious, it means don't be swept away with emotion. And oftentimes when we think emotion in that sort of capacity, we think, like sadness or anger, those kind of emotions, the ones that we see almost as negative, rather than, he'd almost more be talking about being excitable here. Because there would have been a lot of Christians that would get stoked about hearing this news and then just wait around. And that wasn't the purpose for them. It was, no, Christ is coming back, so you can go do your job and do it well, rather than just waiting around excitedly. As a person that gets excited, I get that. It's really easy to lose track of things or to get overzealous for that. And so that's why it includes the word watchful too. Constantly watching yourself, making sure your ministry you're doing everything in your ministry with the end in mind, rather than just getting caught up in the flow of things. We looked at that on Palm Sunday, of the crowd loving it and getting into it, even though they may not have meant it. Verse 8 says, "And above all things, have fervent love for one another, for," and this comes from Proverbs, "love will cover a multitude of sins." So it's cool to see all the way in Proverbs, they were starting to get to this whole idea of love being so important, because that's the new covenant. Love your neighbor as yourself. Christ came spreading the idea of love for us. And, when it says fervent love, it's talking about being strained. Fervent actually would have been like used to describe a runner in those days, just pushing every muscle. It's the kind of love that you come home from a long day of work, your back hurts, you stub your toe on the way in, you want nothing more than to lay down and watch some TV, and a friend calls you and says they need some help with something. And saying, okay, I'll do it. It's that kind of love that's always ready to forgive. Always ready, and it's tiresome, but worth it, and that's what he's getting at here, because, like it says, it covers a multitude of sins. It will help us so much more in the long run if we are practicing this kind of love daily. And remember, love here is an action, not an emotion. Verse 9 says, "Be hospitable to one another without grumbling." Now, this is the one where, we're like, yeah, I'm a kind person. How much do you complain on a given day? Think about that. I say this because I like to think I'm the king of complainers. It's so easy for me to look at the negatives and things. And I'm sure that happens for most of you, where, it's just really easy. I mean, think about where we're around. Look at how many people online are complaining about not being able to go out. And I understand that. I get that with them. Think about your friends that you have. Think about qualities that makes you want to have someone as your friend. I doubt complaining is on there. We are to be people that are friendly, that people can come to. Because when it says be hospitable, that would have been taking care of strangers. we have to be people that people know that we're not going to complain. We're not going to attack them for needing help, right? We have to watch ourselves in that. And then finally, 10 through 11 gets to kind of some cool stuff where it says, as each one has received a gift. So these are talking about these spiritual gifts, and we're about to look at those. Minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If anyone speaks, let him speak as the oracles of God. If anyone ministers, let him do it with the ability which God supplies. Then in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belong the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. So here it's actually getting into spiritual gifts, which if you go to, these are found in Romans 12, and we're actually going to start in verse 6. It says, starting in chapter 12, verse 6, having then gifts different according to the grace that is given to us. So we all have different ones. Let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching. He who exhorts in exhortation. He who gives with liberality. He who leads with diligence. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness. So to break these down a little bit and to see what these gifts are. Prophecy, a lot of times when we think of prophecy, we think of like predicting the future. That's not necessarily what's getting here. They did that a little bit in Acts, but when it talks about this now, it's talking about prophecy means to speak forth. So what it's referring to is speaking the truth of God. If you're someone that loves to share the gospel truth with others, if you're someone that loves to call back the Bible and say, well, let's keep in mind this truth. Those that bring forth God's promises and speak them to other people. That reminds people, and especially in bad moments, hey, this is God's truth. The gift of ministry, that's practically serving. That's stacking chairs, checking on people, the dudes that valet park, those kind of important jobs within the church that are very practical that need done. When it says teaching, that's clarifying, understanding, and breaking down the word. Knowing how to make the word make sense to others. And so when it says to exhort, that's encouraging others to obey the word. Keeping people going, coming alongside them. One who gives, that's giving, your resources. I've had a lot of friends where they've said, ministry isn't for me. That's not where I fit in the best. But I would love to become like some sort of businessman to give to ministry so that others can continue doing that. When it says leads, that's kind of administration type things, delegating those that are higher up. And then finally, the gift of mercy, and that's the gift of sympathy. And First Peter tells us, do all these for God. If you are doing all of this, if this is your goal, you need to be doing this to exalt God, to give Him glory. Don't do these. God did not bless you to do these so that you can do them for yourselves and feel good about yourself the whole time, but rather that you can further His kingdom using them. So the only two questions I have today are, what are you good at? Which of these gifts do you kind of identify with? What are you good at when it comes to ministry? And then how can you use it to further God's kingdom? If you have questions, text me about them. It's so great to kind of understand these because then we know how to keep going for Christ. So that's today's lesson. I'll be coming at you on Friday, and I've been praying for you guys, and I hope you're just staying strong through all of this. I'll see you guys.